We're on now. Okay, here we are. Last time. I want to thank you all again for joining us here throughout the last couple of days and for staying to the very end. This is often one of my favorite sessions, and not just because it's the last one, but also because we get a chance to bring together many of the key speakers and VIPs and decision makers in a given, in this case, in Mexico. And we put the presentations away, and we kind of do away with the facts and figures, and we just sort of try to explore some of the topics that are relevant today and what will be in the future. And I think in particular, this session, as this conference really, sharing the vision for Mexico, is to kind of get a sense of where we're going as opposed to kind of where we are. So again, I look forward to that. Before we sort of kick off, a couple of points. As I said in the last session as well, we're trying to get your feedback as much as possible. So you have the two options. You can use the digital option, which, via our conference app, which by now I hope you've downloaded, and where you'll find, plenty of other functions as well. But amongst them is the ability to give us your feedback. Again, there's the conference app there. So fill in that, and if you prefer to fill in on paper, then they're also on the tables. You can fill them in, and you can give them to our staff, or you can just simply leave it on the table. We'll collect them. And as Louis mentioned, and I'm sure I've mentioned already a bunch of times, this is really important to us and to how we shape this conference in the future as well. Another thing, just a side note. In a moment we'll use the app in a couple of minutes to just do a few polling questions that we had wanted to do earlier but didn't get to, just to kick off this session. So we'll do that in a couple of minutes. But before that, there were a couple of prize draws from some of our sponsors, and they wanted to make sure we announced the winners here. If the winners aren't in the room, then the companies, one is RJ & Son and one is Penske, we'll get in touch with them. But I'm happy to announce the winner from RJ & Sons for the Apple Watch, and they were collecting business cards. The winner is Adriano Meluzzo, who's the VP of National Sales at Ryder. Adriano has won an Apple Watch. I'm not sure if Adriano is still here. Well, in this case, it's in luck because RJ & Sons will get in touch and make sure that you get the watch. So congratulations. And then from Penske, Apple Watches is the theme this year. Obviously, everyone's looking to get in shape, I guess, and track their movements. So the wearable revolution continues. So whether they're going to bring them into the warehouse or use them at home, I'm not sure. But Penske also is giving away two Apple Watches. Apple Watches to two people. And one winner is Raul Gamboa from BMW. So again, as happened last session, maybe Dr. Koch will interrupt this and claim it for himself, but if not, Raul, congratulations. Penske will facilitate and give you that. And the other winner from Penske is from Vitro. It's Alfonso Saenze. So Alfonso, if you're still here, and if you're not, again, Penske has your business card, and we'll get in touch. So congratulations to Adriano, to Raul, and to Alfonso on winning the prizes, and thank you to RJ & Sons and to Penske, and of course to all of our sponsors for your support and for making that engaging. So we thought, since this session we'll be posing some questions to our esteemed panel here, but we thought we can do a bit of an audience polling just to get the feel of the room a little bit, maybe kick off some discussion. So if you remember from yesterday, we did this. You open up the conference app, which you've hopefully downloaded by now, and there is a tab called Live Poll. And then if you click on that live poll, we'll bring it up in a moment, and we'll just have two or three questions to get your response on. I think Louis started off the conference with the short-term view. What was your kind of budget and expectation for Mexico in 2018? We want to ask you, what do you think a little bit longer? So maybe over the next 5 years, for example. How are you expecting your business to develop? You can see the answers there. Are you looking at continued substantial growth, so in the sort of double-digit year-on-year kind of growth and investment? Are you looking to keep a solid investment, sort of increasing somewhat, remaining around the same level as now, decreasing somewhat, or do you see potential big decreases over the next 3 to 5 years? The answers were very positive for 2018 yesterday, so just interested to see what you think looking further out. So when you get a chance, please vote now and we'll reveal the answer. So also extremely positive, perhaps it was even more positive if I remember correctly from what the one-year outlook was. 88% of you expect increases, 44% double-digit increases, and again, nobody is expecting any decreases. So this is a very optimistic audience, and it's good to hear.
Chris, I just asked, does that also include marketing budgets? That you'll increase them so substantially over the next year or so? Just a thought.
As Louis speaks, the answers are adjusted, interestingly. So Louis has inspired some changes in the answers, even since I read them out. Luckily for Louis, it's even more positive. So it's actually, substantial increases has won the vote there at 47%. We will not hold it against you. These are anonymous answers, by the way. So my company's biggest logistics challenge in Mexico currently, is it lack of transport warehouse port capacity? Is it cross-border bottlenecks? Or is it high damage and vandalism rates? So what do you see as your biggest logistics challenge amongst those options now? That's not a surprise. 47% say lack of transport capacity, 34% talking about damage and vandalism. So obviously, we heard a lot about both of these topics at the conference, and no surprise there. That's what you see as the biggest challenges going ahead here. We just have another 1 or 2 questions. Okay, this one, in the transport and freight network, so since we anticipated that capacity would be your biggest issue, let's break it down a little bit. Which is the biggest capacity issue? Is it trucking? Is it rail and intermodal? Is it seaports? Is it airports? Or is it cross-border? We left off Avenue Reforma and when it gets shut down, as we experienced last night. But so what's the biggest transport and capacity issue amongst these options? Pretty strong majority there for rail and intermodal, followed by trucking. So again, we heard in the last session, I think Veracruz would have probably been coming under the most pressure, but overall in the audience sees rail and intermodal as currently the biggest bottleneck. And just, I think we'll make this the last question if we go on to the freight and damage and vandalism, which was identified as a big issue. Would you say the situation in Mexico recently has significantly improved, somewhat improved, remained the same, somewhat worsened, or significantly worsened?
I think the freight that we control, so there's minimal change.
So this is the first somewhat more negative answer we see. So most of you say it's about the same, but followed pretty closely by somewhat worsened. So that situation isn't perhaps changing so quickly, which I suppose that makes sense. But as we've heard throughout the day, this is a major issue. Perhaps it's positive that it's not significantly worsening so terribly, but not as much improvement as we'd probably like to see. Okay, well, I think we'll leave the polling there because we want to go to our panel. And those questions sort of just give us a little bit of sense of some of the challenges that we were, of course, talking about throughout the last 2-3 days. And we can now maybe build on those to go a little further. So our panel today, you would have met most of them here during the conference the last 2 days, but thanks again to Peter Koltai from Audi for joining us back on stage here for what I think he's admitted is his last Automotive Logistics Mexico conference, but nonetheless, we're glad to take advantage of as much time as we can get, so thanks to Peter. Dr. Koch from BMW Group, and hopefully not his last conference here, since the plant is very much still in ramp up, and we'll have a lot to talk about. I'll have some videos perhaps to even beat Audi by next year. So Dr. Peter Friedrich Koch from BMW. Joining us again from Penske, Joe Collier, the head of sales. Joe, have a great presentation yesterday, and thanks again for joining us now to give a perspective from a key logistics service provider. And joining us again from earlier this morning, Rafael Lopez, Head of Material Planning and Logistics for Ford here in Mexico. Thank you again, Rafael, for taking some more time to answer our questions. And I'm not sure, can security do something about the guy that sat on the end of the panel who's just won't go, no. Louis Yakumi, you get a 2-for-1 here. We'll both be drawing up some questions. Conference was titled "The Vision for Mexico," and I think, again, I'm always amazed by the kind of positivity and optimism here, and I think we saw that. I thought that last night after 2 hours on the bus trying to get to the dinner, and just how, it seemed to roll off everybody's back. Okay, there's worse things happening in the world, and this is true. And everybody had a great time and thought, no big deal. What's happening with NAFTA and the uncertainty. And then we heard, obviously, from Mrs. Espinoza yesterday, that doesn't feel at all that investment is declining or will go down, and then, of course, Mexico will fight its corner to keep all the advantages. You can agree or disagree about the investment side, but obviously the outlook there is very positive. And obviously, your polling just now, which shows expectation for huge growth. So I'm encouraged by that, but obviously sometimes as journalists, we need to bring a dose of skepticism as well to what's happening, and clearly the challenges which you've all laid out and which we've obviously just voted on as well show that there is obviously still much work to do. So I thought I'd kind of just start at a high level here with the kind of title of the session and indeed the conference, "The Vision for Mexico." Peter and BMW would have presented some of this already a little bit in their presentations, but perhaps the panel can highlight their vision for their operation in Mexico, in the next 5 to 10 years. What's the biggest things that you want to see change, improve, and perhaps a few words about what we can do to get there. We need a whole nother conference to really cover them off, but let's start with perhaps your 1 or 2 key things in your vision for Mexico over the medium to longer term. So maybe we can start with Peter.
For the next 5 or 10 years, the vision, I will stay maybe at the next 5 years. I have shown to you in my presentation a few visions, how we want to use digitalization. So I'm not going to talk about that one. Much more, I would like to describe maybe the situation regarding to the questions which you have asked before that to the podium. For example, I have seen that everybody nearly says that the budget will be increased for logistic costs. I can say for Audi it's absolutely the different. My budget will be cut every year because the expectation is to improve. We are behind us is a ramp-up year. So we are running now on full capacity, so it's time to optimize and to cut costs and then to make better processes. So this will be one of the major challenge also for the next 5 years to achieve a very robust and stable logistics supply chain to the factory and also in the factory to cut the cost and then to improve our efficiency. So that will be for sure the absolutely focus for the next 5 years. After the next 5 years, you are at the end of the product cycle, so then will be again the focus to renew a product. Second point, which I was also wondering about, everybody has some problems with vandalism or with some unexpected situation on the roads with products, so with fully built up units with the cars and also with material. It's a part of the robust supply chain. We face with problems that sometimes trucks are disappeared with material from us. If it's something which is very short, maybe, then that causes also big problems in the factory. So this uncertainty would be good to get out. That's why we would like to have a central control tower, but also BMW has shown that one of the most important points to have a good transparency about the whole supply chain. And the second one, the vandalism. It means that if wagons which are running into the direction of Veracruz and the cars are prepared like that, that you can give it to a customer, and then they destroy these cars, they take off wheels, they break windows, and all these cars, they come back to the factory, and then you have first a problem with it. That's also something what in the next 5 years has to be solved. I don't think so that Mexico can wait for the next 5 years to solve this problem. This problem has to be solved very shortly. So maybe that's a short view about it.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, I tend to agree. Mexico is a very attractive location still for production, and this also means for logistics. A lot to come here, a lot is here, and already a lot to come. I think before going to visions, let's get to the basic issues: infrastructure, quality of infrastructure, reliability of services, getting rid of this vandalism as a kind of hygienic factors is important. And for that, I also think it is good and advisable for Mexico not to grow too fast, because some of these issues I'm referring to are pains of growth, excessive growth within the history, growth which will still come, and we'll have to maintain the infrastructure and everything according to that growth. Going one step ahead with regard to visions, I don't have any fear about that we have here the right partners where we can go the way of digitalization. We've seen yesterday. I think there is nothing really which is impossible here in Mexico. Everything can be achieved, everything can be integrated, and I think that will be a way together of the OEMs, of the first-tier suppliers, with the logistics service providers and transport providers, and that will be a common issue for logistics all over the world. Last thing with regard to automatization, I see the pressure much higher, first in Europe, first in the United States, simply due to the labor costs. Whether it comes here and when it comes here, it's hard for me to prognosticate. I think excellent logistics systems can also be organized with a lot of manual work, and that I see at least for the next 5 years, the future.
Thank you.
So we remain very optimistic about Mexico. Thanks to my good friends on the OEM side who continue investing, into the region. It affords many opportunities for logistics service providers. So I'll definitely echo those statements. I think the biggest challenge in front of us, I think, is going to be around human capital. I think there are definite opportunities when you're starting new with a brand new facility where you can get your systems and your processes set up properly right from day one, and you're not trying to integrate a number of disparate systems. But also the opportunity to take advantage of all this wonderful technology that is in front of us. With all that being said, it takes a different individual to be capable in a different skill set to execute on those technologies and those strategies. So human capital will definitely be a challenge for everyone in the future.
Well, in our case, we foresee the operations of Ford continue being here in Mexico with the current production that we have. Obviously, the products of the company will be updated according to the changes of technology. Ford worldwide is migrating to create new technology vehicles, car, hybrids, electric, and we are moving in that direction also. For that is very important, and is very important that the strategy for the company, and for sure Ford of Mexico will be integrated in this change. Talking of about logistics, I already shared with the audience which could be our vision for 2020, and we would like to have a big improvement in all the deficiencies or all the things that we are lacking of. Major factors could be we would like to have the logistics chain as synchronized outside of our four-wall operation, in the same manner that we have our four-wall operation synchronized. We have seen that we are very good in synchronizing our logistic chain inside our plant, but the challenge is how to have the same synchronization outside for the inbound material as well as for the outbound of our products. That's the challenge. Another big challenge that we'll have to comply with this vision is infrastructure, talent, and information technology, Christoph.
Okay. And I don't know how much is similar or different, but we looked at the visions, for 2020 or whatever. But I wondered, what are your top priorities for 2018? What is your maybe one or two or maybe three top priorities for 2018? That might make it might be reaching your vision, but often it's something that's more specific. It could be a specific thing for 2018. So again, what are your top 1, 2, 3 priorities for 2018? And I'll start just from this side now.
You want me to begin?
Yes, please.
Number one could be port capacity for port development. Mm-hmm. We have seen that Veracruz is making some improvements in capacity and infrastructure, mm-hmm. But as well as Veracruz, we need some other ports, let's say in the Pacific Ocean, to be able to live with our products from that site. We are already living from Mazatlan, but there is a huge possibility to improve the operation in this port. Second one could be new rail car capacity, mm-hmm. new routes of rail. And the third one, and I don't know which is first, second, or third, is reliability. We should have more security in all the logistic network. Mm-hmm. That's very important.
Okay. Joe, as an LSP, what would be your top 3 priorities?
So first and foremost, as I mentioned, human capital, ensuring that we have the right people in the right place and are properly trained to execute. It's going to be a challenge, and we need to ensure that we're staffed to satisfy the needs of our customers. Secondarily, I think it's really around ensuring we have proper alignment with our customers. There's absolutely no shortage in a lot of things happening inside the automotive industry. A lot of changes, and those changes are happening rapidly. And to ensure we're aligned and that we understand the objectives and your business strategies and your vision to ensure we're there along that trail to execute. And then finally, just continuing focusing and investing in our execution capabilities. So may it be new technologies that drive value, or just the day-to-day execution, and always trying to be a step ahead of what the needs of our customers are.
Okay. And Dr. Koch, you're probably expecting an easy year as you're ramping up, getting ready to open the plant. So I don't know if it's playing more golf or what would be your top priorities for 2018?
Very similar. Availability of enough availability of qualified people, workforce. Second, quality and also capacity of infrastructure. And third, more focus on protection against crime, fraud, and vandalism.
Okay, with the view from today, this is the view from today. Mexico is a country where many things happen very quickly, so you have many times new challenges and surprises. But with the view from today, we will work on 2 priorities. So that's why I will not go into 3, only 2. One, we have still one bottleneck in our whole logistic chain. That's Veracruz. And now it's already the 3rd year when we are just all the time trying to get some improvements. It's like if you would like to reserve in a good restaurant a table, and all the time you hear it only, yes, maybe the next time, maybe the next time. What you do, you search another restaurant after a certain of time. We will do the same. We will search an alternative for Veracruz. We will try Tuxpan as a possible alternative for shipping. And the second one, as I said before, optimize all our processes. We are now in a direct competition with all the Volkswagen Group factories regarding to cost, regarding to efficiency. And that's why we have to take this challenge and to prove that we are also regarding to cost and efficiency as good as the other factories in Europe and in all the other countries.
When Rafael showed a slide earlier from the World Bank Logistics Performance Index, it said that Mexico has, I think, 76 ports or 78 ports. I doubt it feels that way to the people on the panel in terms of the number, the choices there. But Peter, you just mentioned Tuxpan. First of all, can I clarify, is that containers and vehicles both or which? And then I can follow that up to Rafael because I think Ford is using Mazatlan 7 times a month, and I think that's relatively recent, at least compared to maybe a year or 2 ago. So maybe you can speak a bit to kind of starting up at a new port and what the challenges have been in infrastructure. But Peter, is Tuxpan going to be for containers or vehicles?
Only vehicles. We have had a look at it, and we will make a trial with this port. I'm not sure how long time ago the motorway has been completed to Tuxpan, so you can achieve it pretty well from San Jose Chapa, for example. I don't think so that there will be some problems also for the vessels, for the FBU to get into this port, because you hear sometimes that the container ships would have maybe some restrictions in this area. And the port itself has a good infrastructure. It has possibilities to increase, extend without major timelines and problems. So we will try to solve this bottleneck issue with this new possibility.
It would, of course, mean using less rail, because now you take advantage of the rail infrastructure at the plant to go to Veracruz. I'm guessing to Tuxpan there would be fewer opportunities.
There is no railway connection. But anyway, we have a mixture from 60 to 80% we take by railway and the rest of it by truck. In Veracruz, we even have a big problem to unload trucks. You have only a very limited capacity to unload trucks. You do not have all these problems in Tuxpan.
And in Mazatlan, I think, as I said, that was a relatively new alternative, wasn't it?
Yes, in Mazatlan, the opportunity that we see is storage capacity for the vehicles, quantity of vehicles that can be stored before they are loaded into the vessel or after they are unloaded from the vessel, and also rail infrastructure inside the port, and also IT technology within the port to provide inventory control, reliable inventory control, and match with all the systems that you need to handle the export and the exports. We are exporting through Mazatlan.
And are those exports going to the US, going also to Asia?
We are exporting by Mazatlan. We are exporting to China and Korea, and also we have some vessels that cross the Panama Channel, and goes to Jacksonville, Baltimore.
Okay, interesting. And Dr. Koch, I think on the map you showed us yesterday, there was plans to kind of use as much of the coastline as you could. So I'm guessing it sounds like you're looking at a diversified strategy for the exports side.
We are not fixed yet.
Yeah.
We are looking at the alternatives at the moment and also are in the tendering process. Obviously, 2 years ago when we decided to go here, we put a lot of effort with regard to Veracruz, and I still think that we will look for Veracruz and work with it. But of course, we also hear the recognitions from colleagues from the entire market, and we're also looking for alternatives. For us, we have the possibilities. If we think about 60 or 70% of the volume going to the United States, going centrally upwards with the railroad entirely, or going with railroad short track to the ports in west and east, and then short sea up to the north. So we're looking at the alternatives, and I think next year I would be
In a position.
easy to say where we go.
Yeah. Something to look forward to.
On the transportation capacity and a little bit on the infrastructure, it seems that everyone's doing it individually. I don't know if there's any power or if you are doing it together in different ways, because the ports, perhaps that's something you need to do collectively, or is there a competitive advantage in doing it separately? The railroads, you've probably got even less option than the ports. So if you expect any changes there, again, it's got to be collectively. And then there's the roads, of course, the road capacity, the warehousing capacity, which came up as the number one transportation issue. So 2 questions to that is, so there is a transportation capacity issue. What are you doing about it and how? And then the other one is about, again, communication, really, that, we hear that, again, using Veracruz as an example, and it really isn't a chance to kick Veracruz, because to be fair, they are the biggest, and they're still investing a lot of money to try and develop. But it seems that you have meetings with them every week, we hear, with different plants and so on, and yet we're still raising questions at the higher level, even from a conference stage. So it's about, what are you doing about the transportation capacity? Is it best being done individually? Are you doing it individually? Should you be collaborating? That's really my question. I'll start with Dr. Koch on this one.
I think we are all discussing with the same transport service providers about the problems and the ways to proceed. I'm not aware that we really have discussions bilaterally about to join the forces, but we're talking with the same service providers. What we recognize is that there are plans to increase capacity and so on. What's a little bit the question mark for us is the reliability of the dates given. So we have a clear plan when to start production, when to go in series, when to go to which volume. And if things like increasing capacity are moved forward for 1 or 2 years, that's simply not acceptable to us.
I don't know if you, Rafael, or we'll get to I'll leave you next, okay. Joe, but just see from the car makers, have you got anything to add to that? Or?
Well, the only thing that if you have a capacity problem, you search for a solution. Yep. So that's why yesterday I think I have spoken about it, that I would have liked to have as well a dedicated train for containers, for example, for Veracruz into the factory. We are not able to get a competitive business with the railway company until now, so we use trucks. And the same if we have a problem with the railway. For example, the route to Veracruz is closed because of vandalism, and it happens that they close for the whole day. Mm-hmm. We cannot move any trains. Then you do not have another chance. You have to use then trucks. So you try to use another option. And until now, there are no discussions between the OEMs that we use the transport capacity on a common way. I think last year we were discussing about it. This is something where you need at least two partners. They want it very strongly, and then they have clear rules for that. And they have also, both of them, big advantages of it. And for that, you need also geographically very close locations, I think.
Mm-hmm. Rafael, anything to add to that?
Well, what your question is, if we are doing efforts by ourselves or together, we as Ford, and I know many other OEMs, are members of the AMIA. Mm-hmm. AMIA, that's an organization where we are represented, and we all together have raised our needs, our requests, and AMIA has been done a very good job in putting together all the needs. And that's the forum that we have where all the OEMs are, most of the OEMs are represented, and the needs are putting together. Mm-hmm. Luz from the Puerto de Veracruz already mentioned that.
Yes.
We are working in that effort.
Yes. And unfortunately, the main guys, Eduardo from AMIA, could not make it to the conference because of the NAFTA discussions and so on. Otherwise, they do normally try and speak at the conference. And to Joe as the LSP, firstly, I don't know if I'm restricting you as saying as, you know, maybe whether it's the roadside that you're focusing on the capacity, but otherwise, what can you as an LSP do to support the capacity issues that they're facing in Mexico?
So, and I'll answer that two parts, what's happening in the States as well as what's happening in Mexico. Overall trucking capacity has exceeded 93%. That causes a lot of challenges in a number of different ways. For Penske, the commodities that we're handling have very aggressive transit times. So utilization is essential. And then if you think about the asset and the requirement for uptime, and you consider that 93% capacity, you're more exposed to malfunctions within the asset. So how can we keep our assets moving at a maximum utilization rate to meet those very aggressive transit times that we're responsible for? There's a number of things that we're doing and experimenting with. For example, in the States, we've built a hub and spoke network. And that's really to maximize that utilization where there's a number of handoffs from driver to driver to keep those trucks and those drivers working. There's a driver shortage, significant driver shortage in front of us as well, and hours of service limitations. So again, that whole theme around utilization. So that hub and spoke network really supports what we're trying to achieve, moving it from Canada all the way down to the border and to maximize that utilization. But the driver shortage creates complications. So we're experimenting with platooning, driverless vehicles and things of that nature on how can we meet that demand, maximize our utilization, as well as keep as many assets on the road as possible. You know, the bottlenecks at the border are obviously a challenge around that utilization. So it's ensuring we have the right partnerships on both sides of the border to ensure seamless crossing and to have the right partners in Mexico, those carrier partners, to ensure that we have that delivery to the final destination. But crossing the border, it's how do I continue that track and trace capability and ensuring that visibility from origin to final destination. And you think simple things that we have in place today should be happening, but there's a lot of challenges around some of these carriers to have that type of technology to be able to communicate with our systems to ensure that end-to-end visibility. So a lot of those activities where we can maximize our utilization of our assets, have the visibility of where potential disruptions may be, and have strategies in place to accelerate and move through those.
Mm-hmm.
If we were sat in Germany right now, and we were talking in Europe, and we were talking about challenges for the future and things you were looking at, there's a reasonable chance you would be talking about sustainability as well. So, you know, Audi has recently started using a purely electric train. I know BMW's got some electric truck deliveries. So reducing emissions in the supply chain is an issue, perhaps driven by regulation and other concerns as well. Not particularly something we're hearing about here, perhaps for obvious reasons. But perhaps we're also just missing the point. I mean, how important is a sort of so-called green logistics strategy or reduction in emissions for your supply chain here in Mexico? And are there any examples of how you track that and look to reduce that? anyone who's willing.
I can answer on the asset side, right? So I mean, the electric truck obviously is quite intriguing, but there's a number of unknowns, right? How does that impact payload? Because there's significant weight that's added to the unit. Speed of recharging, and again, does that have any impacts on utilization of the assets? So I think it's something that from a Class 8 perspective, we're all looking at. We're really trying to understand the impacts to our customers to payload, just-in-time environments, window times, and things of that nature, and ensuring that we're working with our partners on quantifying the ROI, because there's a higher cost, obviously, for that asset as well.
BMW Group does as all global supply chain planning, and of course it's a matter of cost and economics to reduce the waste and to utilize cost-efficient and also energy-efficient modes of transportation. So I think we're doing focus on that, but beside that, of course, what we were talking before, having a good infrastructure, having a reliable supply chain also helps to save costs, to save energy, and to increase ecology, make a better ecology, because all these wasted with special transport, something going wrong, special transports, and so on, costs a lot of money and is not really eco-friendly.
Well, Audi and the whole Volkswagen Group has also worldwide orientation and concept for sustainability. But you have local factors. You have just said about the green, it was earlier, the green train. Now you said it as the new definition, but it's a pure electrical train from the south of Germany to the north of Germany. Well, if I look at the train transportation in Mexico, it's hard to say that it's a green way of transporting. So if we would like to do it also, there is no possibility to have it. The most influence, you have it in your factory, in your plant. That's what we are focusing as well very strongly, that we have absolutely the same standards than we have it in Europe or everywhere in the whole world. And in the inbound and outbound logistics, you are depending very strongly on that, what is happening in the country itself. And you try to use the most friendly solution of it.
Okay.
First of all, just before, Louis, I want to make sure we bring the audience in. So if anyone wants to pose a question, please do raise your hand, and otherwise Louis and I will just keep going and going. Right, there's actually a question right in the middle. So as we've got our youngest team member, he's meant to be our fastest, he's on his way to you. Still pretty slow though, if you ask me.
Thank you. Roberto Michel from ITT. It's a question for the panel. How is the panel planning to cope with a virtual new requirement to increase the national content of Mexico-produced cars, moving from 62 up to 85%, as requested by the U.S. Negotiating party?
The question is, I mean, one of the proposals that's been discussed in the NAFTA negotiations is the U.S. wanting to see an increase in local supplier content within NAFTA to 85% from the current 62%, and potentially with a provision of 50% U.S. content. Okay, this isn't fixed and firm law yet, but the question is how would you respond to that? What would your strategy be to meet such requirements? Is Mexico, would it be able to do it? If anyone wants to comment.
Well, my response will be very simple, because right now there is no definition. And if you see the news at this very moment, negotiations and talking about that are in place. Then we cannot have any statement about what is going to happen, because at this very moment is undefined.
We're looking close to the negotiations and how they proceed. We are to some extent in a, we think, comfortable situation that we produce at the moment in the United States more car than we actually sell there. We have the biggest car plant of BMW is in Spartanburg, United States, which produces up to 450,000 cars, and we are selling roughly 400,000 cars in the United States. So on principle, for the worth of value, we are the biggest automotive exporter of the United States, not broadly known. So the question now comes to, of course, in Spartanburg, we do not build every car just for the US-American market. There are built the X cars, quite a lot used in the United States, but the other big share exported, and other models are built in other factories worldwide and imported. So for us also, it will be now interesting to see what the further negotiations to NAFTA will look like, whether there will be a balancing of all these inbound and outbound volume streams, or whether it's separated at all. It's really hard to forecast what will be the result of the discussions and negotiations at the moment.
We have achieved the target, which is today the target, the 62% for our factory. We bet this target as well. We have a higher local content part. And if this regulation will come, then this is the next challenge what we have to face and where we have to react on it. It can be very difficult because only if you look at that, if you take an engine and the transmission, if you get them already from abroad, then it will be very, very difficult to achieve this target. But we will react on that. What will be the result of the negotiation?
Yeah, I mean, it's thank you for answering, all of you. I appreciate this is not an easy thing to comment on, especially with the laws not in place. What I can say, and this is not from anyone on the panel, but just from talking to other car makers, what the planning, the NAFTA supply chain today, they don't see borders. I mean, of course, you feel borders when you move through them, but you're not planning the supply chain based on the border as such, or based on this country. That's what makes it challenging, I think. So a requirement that suddenly 50% of the parts would have to come from the US for something you're building in, somewhere in Mexico, certainly doesn't necessarily make business sense just on the basis of how one plans logistics. But as everyone said, the requirements that will be in place, there will be a measure, and obviously everyone will strive to do it. But we'll see what actually happens at the end of the day. But thank you for the question. It's on a lot of our minds.
I think there's another question, and if logistics are about being smart, I'd like to congratulate young Brett, our guy who was slow with the microphone, getting it in the middle. So he found a smart solution. He gets questions from where he's standing. You see, that's the smart way to do it. So I believe there's a question over there.
Hello, my name is Izutani from Tokyo Marine Insurance Company. And then I would like to ask you, the panels, about your visions about how you're going to control the risk of the transport damage risks during inland transit. Because for our as an insurance company, we, especially for the Japanese clients, we provide not only the financial service by means of the policy coverage, but also provide some loss prevention services, which is aiming for minimizing the damage risks like vandalism or the natural hazard like hail or flood. That eventually contributes to minimizing the damage risks and maximizing the logistics quality. And so one possible way is that, of course, you can delegate that responsibility or collaborate with like external service providers, including the logistics company. And the other possible way would be, under this digitalized world, maybe you can incorporate some, cutting edge techniques or technologies in this aspect. So I would like to hear what would be the keyword or your vision about the over the next 5 years.
First of all, yes, we utilize external insurance companies for all the outbound vehicle logistics. This is a given fact and nothing new. to start now. That is a given fact. Of course, also the money you have to pay for this insurance strongly depends on the risk which is associated, and maybe we pay a little bit more here on some routes in Mexico than on railroads in Germany, to make an example. So we want to minimize the payments for that. We want to minimize the risk. And we think with the utilization of some technology, like I showed yesterday, connected distribution, last state call, we can minimize the risk. If it is known that every BMW has a SIM card in and can send his position data automatically to BMW worldwide, that may be limiting the interest to get the BMWs out of the railroad.
Okay.
I hope so.
We have a few years of experience now with transportation in Mexico, and that's why the major risk of the most of our problems are not because of normal transportation. We have learned very quickly that we have to improve our packaging technique as well. The roads are not the same like in Europe, but it was all at the beginning. When we have a problem, then it means that a complete load disappears, that it gets robbed or hijacked. We would like to improve our transparency with the control tower, which I have shown already a few times in this conference, and be able to react on that quicker. We have with all our transportation companies the agreement that they have also GPS localization, not only for the trucks but also for the trailers, and I think with transparency we try to find the best way, and with many talks with the police and the government, that they help us that this kind of issues doesn't happen.
Anything to add to that?
No, really, that the only, I can add exactly very similar comment than to Peter, because all our transportation depends by a third party, let's say rail car or trucking. We were working with them and asking these companies to improve the information or the transparency of where the load is, and implementing some safety measures. There are some others that we can implement together. For instance, I remember very well that in the presentation of our friend from Bocar, they are not traveling at night. We have implemented that practice as well. When we, together with our carriers, the car haul, we don't permit them, or we agree with them in order to not to travel at night, or if we know that a zone is dangerous, we have extreme cautions in those cases. Similar cases, we have asked the GPS to the railcar companies and trucking companies.
This question is probably mainly to Ford and Audi, since you have serial production right now. I was thinking earlier how when I put up the question about positive outlooks, and it would probably depend on who was answering the question, right? Because if an expediting premium freight company is really thrilled about the growth in the next 2 or 3 years, that's probably not such good news for some people on the stage. And I wanted to ask Peter, for example, now that you're at serial production, what's the sort of level of kind of expedited freight, premium freight that you're using? Is it sort of at a level in which you're comfortable? Has it improved as you've moved forward? You tried to mitigate it. Similarly for Ford, how does that? And you actually showed us you have 90 air freight shipments per month, some of which I'm sure are planned. But in terms of these deviations and freight, I mean, can you give us some perspective of what you see here in Mexico?
Okay, so you your question is going in that direction, how many part or what is the amount of extra freight, extra premium freight, so much quicker and
Yeah, exactly.
in much smaller
How does that
amount.
level compare in Mexico to what you would
Well.
benchmark or what you'd want it to?
So we had a very, very hard time behind us. I must say that in the second half of 2017, we have used all sort of premium transport with helicopters, with airplanes, with small trucks and little small cars. I think we have used really everything what you can use on the market. There were days when the total capacity of helicopter was used by us from Mexico City, I think, not on our own cost. It was everybody, it was always that someone else had to pay for it who has caused this problem. But last year we had a too high amount, a too high partage of it. This year and the end of next year we became the situation that we are running very stable. Our suppliers are running stable, and the amount of this kind of freights are gone down very strongly.
Yeah. Say what has helped it go down? The suppliers getting better, or
Stability for everybody that who is running a factory, and then if the factory is running stable every day, the required amount of cars are coming out of the factory. It has an influence also to the suppliers. And if the suppliers and the second tier and third tier suppliers are always, they have set up already a regular delivery basis when it's running smooth, let's say like that, then you don't need this kind of transportation anymore. You have to achieve this level, and we have seen that the Mexican market offers a very high level, a very, very high grade of flexibility. Again, absolutely advantage for the location, so the production area Mexico. It's one of the major advantages. You have flexibility, very strong flexibility, but it's better if you don't have to use it.
you just reminded me I'm going to invest in some helicopters in San Luis Potosí, because I think the next might be some opportunities. But how about for Ford? Obviously, it's a more stable. Well, this is a long-standing operation now. So is it more stable?
We have in our operation, Christoph, very good stability. Really, the quantity of premium freight that I showed today in the morning is an average, and the number increases when we are in the launching of a new model. And the problem that we have sometimes, most of the OEMs launch or change model with some weeks or months of difference. And we have experienced sometimes that you cannot find planes in Mexico to air freight. It's incredible, but you are looking for a small or big plane, and there is no availability of planes in Mexico to fulfill the needs of everybody. But right now we have a high stability. And the problem is bigger when you have a completely new model during launch.
Okay. Another kind of slightly more specific area, which is hugely important and something that I've been doing various trips to car makers around the world, and it seems to be one of their top areas of concern, is packaging and containerization. So we haven't heard so much about that at this conference. So if you've got anything to say about what you've done, Peter, specifically for packaging and containerization, what you're doing in your plant, and what your plans are, Dr. Koch, for the packaging and containerization side of the plant.
Sorry, I didn't get it. Packaging and?
Packaging and the container, returnable containers, or one way. I don't mean the big multi-foot containers. So the actual packaging to, from, or in the plant.
So the major volume streams are within Mexico and NAFTA, and there we use a lot of trucks with trailer, not containers. We're trying to organize there a good transportation network. Container we use especially for overseas freight. which comprises for quite a lot of part numbers, but just 10% of the volume. And there we have the shipment of the containers going to the port, intermodal, close to San Luis Potosí, and then from a container yard, getting the containers into us. What we recognized with our first flights was that packaging is an issue, and not every package really looks, if you receive it in the goods received in the plant, looks similar to how it looked like when it was sent. So we are analyzing the routes, we are analyzing the root cause, we also thinking about maybe some improvement of packaging, but also we have some standards worldwide. We don't want to change it for Mexico especially. Mm-hmm. This is a running optimization project.
Mm-hmm. Okay, 2 points I would like to answer to that. First of all, receiving material for the production of the Q5. It is the climatical situation we have seen that it's very demanding. You have very high temperature changes, and also in some areas very high humidity. For example, if something arrives in the summer times in Veracruz, very high temperature, a lot of humidity, you come up to San Jose Chapan, and in the night maybe you have only 5 degrees or 8 degrees. In the winter time you don't have so warm in Veracruz, but then for that you have minus 10 or minus 15 degrees in the nights in San Jose Chapan, and then the day over more than 20 degrees. So it's challenging, and we have seen that we had to react on that. The second point, we are not only a location which builds the Q5 for worldwide market, but we are also a CKD packaging factory. We have CKD production for this Q5 in India, and now the production in China will start for this Q5, and all the Mexican suppliers, we pack them, and we have a consolidation center for it in our factory. So it's also one of our core competence to pack for overseas. And that starts now. We are in the ramp-up phase for this area. That's the next biggest challenge what we have, to deliver all the required material from the Mexican suppliers to China, to the production, to the local production in China for the Q5.
Rafael, how is your packaging?
Well, the packaging has some challenges. These challenges begin since the design of the packaging. The goals when you are designing a packaging is, first one is to assure the quality and the integrity of the parts when you are going to receive them in your plant. Another challenge is to reduce the cost as much as possible, and the packaging should contribute to optimize as well the transportation, the cubing of the trucks or the container. That's and another one is we have an indicator, a goal to design all our packaging green. We want to avoid as much as possible carton and contamination, and use recycling materials when possible.
Is there anything different from Detroit or from the US that is unique to Mexico from a packaging?
No, as a matter of fact, Louis, we designed some packaging for the American plants here in Mexico.
Okay.
Then we work through the same standard and same quality requirements.
Yeah. And Joe, as Penske, what are you doing to support your customers optimizing their packaging? Is it, whether it's the cube utilization or whatever it is, how can you help your customers from the packaging and containerization side?
Well, on the execution side, you have to deploy the same rigor that you would on inbound, right? You have to have that understanding of, the inventory of the returnable container within the supply chain, and again, have that similar rigor towards that reverse logistics and ensuring that we don't get cardboard because there's big disruptions within cardboard.
Yeah.
But also in areas where we're acting as a lead logistics provider, I think there's a lot of input that we provide to the packaging engineers and the buyers of whatnot, looking at cube utilization, opportunities, stackability, things of that nature, you know, liquid versus linear cube, and how can we maximize the utilization of that asset.
Come back a little bit to the human capital issues that Joe raised, and perhaps looking at it specifically around digitalization as well, because one of the things I observe now is a big push from manufacturers, but also logistics companies to invest in startups, to encourage talent. Audi or BMW running hackathons back in Munich or Ingolstadt, bringing young people into, or whatever age, you know, skilled developers in to work on challenges from across the board, whether it's the product or the logistics or production. And I wonder if does it matter if that's happening in Mexico or not? I'm not sure, but are you seeing that sort of innovation in Mexico too, in terms of disruption, in terms of companies that are coming with new ideas, in terms of developers and software programmers and things? Joe, can we start with you maybe?
Yeah, what gets me most excited when I talk to students yesterday or anywhere where I have that opportunity is the enthusiasm that students coming out of college have, as well as the ideas that they have developed. There's so many new technologies and so much more training today than back when I went to school. So they're coming out invigorated, and they're very much, they're thought provokers. They're challenging our thought concepts, and there's different ways of doing things. And the way the younger generation interacts is entirely different than I do today, or the way I did at that particular age. And just within that sphere, I mean, there's so many opportunities that I'm probably not even aware of today. There are things that are happening. It seems like every day I'm learning of a new app or a new way to integrate and socialize with my communities. It benefits me to have that kind of enthusiasm and thought provocation to deploy within our business to ultimately enhance the service to our customers, because we need that. We have to stay one step ahead of the game in order to be relevant within the OEM environment.
That's a source which we would like to use also in the future. We have started different cooperations with universities. We are still searching for some more contacts, and this is something what you know, that this is a source which you have in Mexico, but we haven't used it yet. So we have to do it in the future, and we are going to do it in the future.
In our strategy for Plan San Luis Potosí, digitalization is one of the 7 core elements. And yes, we want to bring together the enthusiasm we also recognize in the universities with the young students, together with the central knowledge we have, and in both ways. So deployment of new developments we have at BMW Group here in Mexico, but also bringing in new ideas whatsoever we may also use for BMW Corporate at all. How that will work, I think it's a little bit early for us now to say, yes, but for sure we also recognize the enthusiasm of the young people, of the students, and we want to utilize it and also give them the chance to utilize it.
I think these are opportunities also, frankly, for Louis and I to consider as well, because we're bringing students into these sessions, but perhaps we can do more to try to bring together some of this community with the established, so that it's not just to get more young people in the room, but also obviously to bring ideas and people together. So I think it's all.
I think we focused on the young people because Chris and I are young, so that was it. Oh. Me too. What about retaining?
Did you want to add something, Rafael? I didn't.
No.
Okay. You didn't
I was
agree that he was young?
I am young too.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
What about retaining the talent, though? Because isn't there a lot of kind of, what's the best way to get good, qualified people, steal them from your competitor?
So, I mean, from my perspective is when you have a young student graduating, getting in their first opportunity, retention is really about, there's a lot of effort, by the way, in order to get that talent into your organization. So you don't want to dismiss that. But it's really about the investment we make. These individuals, they have, like I said, wonderful ideas. They need to be appreciated, but you have to invest into your people. It's not hire them and let them go. You have to have a plan. You have to have a development program in place to ensure that they mature along with the business and with the organization. And my experience has said, those that we invest in, my retention rate is probably 100%. They have gratification, they love coming to work, and we want to be the provider of choice, right? We want, or the employer of choice, we want them to come to us, but recognizing that there's a continuation of effort throughout their career.
And do you try and make sure that working for Penske is fun as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've been with us, Louis. I mean,
And what about for the car makers? How do you either retain the talent? Because there is strong competition, isn't there, for the established or experienced logisticians as well?
Yeah, this will be a very interesting year now. We are having a very strong. We have worked out a way how we try to keep the talent and all our employees with whom we are really satisfied. Make a desire also for them to be a part of the Audi family, and then to feel themselves also to be a part of this family. This is not just the work what they have, but it's also part of their life, and they are having also an interesting work there. They have possibilities to have a career. They have a transparency about it. What are all the possibilities? How far the people can go? How they can grow? It's something very important that we have learned in Mexico. Many of the people they speak about growing. It's different to Germany. If in Germany somebody speaks about it, it's always a vertical career way. Mexico, we have learned it that many people mean it with that time horizontally also to change, that they have the possibility to contribute in the company in different other areas. So it's, we see it also that the desire for the people to do this here in Mexico is much higher than what we know from Europe. In Europe, we have many times more a problem to move the people to do another job or to do something else. Here, the people are coming and asking us, okay, now I'm for 3 years now on this job, I would like to do something different. Something else is interesting for me in the company. So we are reacting that as well. As a company, or for example, as a logistics, I have every week with my all directors a meeting where we look at that, how we could do an internal job. We say it a job börse, so it's where we see who has a demand, who said already that would like to move. And we would like to react on this special demand on the Mexican market. But what I said, it will be an interesting year because some OEMs are already increasing the demand also for their people. So we will see how the structure works and how strong this structure is.
Just retaining people is a challenge in Mexico. Completely different to Germany. Typically, if somebody starts at BMW in the age of 25 and 30, he typically leaves the company at the age of 60 to 65. So not a lot to do in between. But we recognize that issue also in other countries like South Africa, like also Spartanburg in the United States or China. And so we have to find a solution here specific for Mexico. I totally agree with the issue. Growing is a demand of the people they want to have, and you have to fulfill. The second thing where we're also focusing in is providing a good culture within the plant, within the entity, where people feel themselves comfortable as a kind part of their living.
Rafael, You've been here for a few years, so it's not new staff. Maybe it's even harder because you're the company that's built the experienced staff that others want to take. It's not.
No, well, I think in the case of hiring and retention of the talent, Louis, the programs that we have within our companies, we bring to work with us. We have a special scheme for young students we call trainees. In Spanish, we call practicante. And in this manner, they become familiarized with our culture. That's the most important. They get knowledge about what we are doing. And when there is a position where we need to hire somebody full-time, those are the first candidates to be hired. And also to retain the talent, we think, or the philosophy of the companies is economic benefits and fringe benefits for the employee are as important as the environment that you provide to the employee. This means what are the behaviors in the company, which are the path that the employee can follow to grow, to continue developing himself, and that's what we are doing.
I like the idea, Chris, of starting at a young age and staying at Automotive Logistics till you're 65, Chris. You could look like me very soon. Something to aspire to.
You always make the future look so bright, Louis. Any last questions from the audience? I think we're coming to the end. I mean, I tempted to ask Peter for what advice he should give to his successor, since we know. But we might just leave it as to which tequila should your successor start with, so that he can start. No, I mean, I think perhaps we'd like to finish on a little bit of a forward-looking point. So yeah, maybe Peter, what would a word of advice be for your successor, and then for the other panels to think, obviously not for Peter's successor, but looking ahead, either for your team, or your providers, or for yourself, what's some words of advice now looking out over the next year or so?
Over the next year. Okay. First of all, it's a very young company. We are a part, as a logistics, the production control and logistics is a part of a very young company. So you are very much depending still on that you have a team spirit, and then you have the right people in the right position. So we do not have a history of a company where for 10, 15 years is running already on a right level, and that you have many people that they already know exactly what they have to do, and they run the business. So you are absolutely depending on a very highly motivated and flexible team. This is also it was a major point. What was a key to our success from the past, but it will stay a key for the future success. We also made it clearly for example, for our management team, that we had a big number of managers from Germany for the beginning in our team. So we had a mixture of about 50-50 to ramp up this factory. And now we are changing it very strongly. So we go down at least 25% now from the manager positions will be taken by local Mexican managers. So that's also a very good improvement possibility for the people at us in the company. We need to keep it together as well, that I come again to this, the team spirit doesn't disappear. And this is a question of culture. We haven't had this topic in this conference, but to get together the German culture and the Mexican culture, as we have seen from the industry chamber, it's again a major factor. Because these are the soft facts, which are the most difficult to steer. The hard facts, you get it. You have technology, but you take it from Germany or from here. You have infrastructure. They're all hard facts. You can work on it. You can tell it to everybody clearly. You have to do this job, and that has to be the result, and you have so many time and so many budget. But you cannot tell it, now you will be friends and you will work now together and then you will solve all the problems. And if the problem occurs in the night, even though you will react on that, then you will find a solution for that until the next morning. That's something what, if you achieve it, it comes from the team and it works on it. If you don't achieve it, then you have to, you struggle every time in some position.
Good advice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe it is time to wrap up. So I hope you've had a good couple of days. Firstly, I'd like to thank the panel for a great final session, sharing some very interesting and honest thoughts with us. Thank you very much. A couple of small points, just a reminder, and it's not a small point, it's a huge point really, the evaluation forms, whether you use the app or whether you use the written evaluation forms on the tables, your feedback is really, really very important to us. We take it very, very seriously. So if you can either complete them, if it's the app, obviously we'll get that electronically. If it's the table, if you want to leave it on the table or hand it into the registration disc if you're filling on the form. Or if you want, you can just screw them up into little balls and throw them at me, because at least I'll understand what that kind of feedback means. I suppose it's more obvious to me. Also, the translation headsets, they're the kind of small thing that you actually accidentally put away in your, as you're packing all your things away. So please make sure you hand the translation headsets back. They're not exactly Apple iPhones, so there's no great value in accidentally keeping them. So please make sure you hand in the translation headsets.
Don't work, unfortunately.
I'd like to thank our sponsors, Penske, our premier sponsor. Thank you, Joe, and the host of our great gala dinner last night. Thank you. Round of applause is extra, just so you know. CHEP, our innovation sponsor. Our gold sponsors, CNW, Covercar, KHS, Kuhner & Nagel, ProTrans, Arjan Sons, Royale International, who hosted the cocktail reception, Ryder, who hosted the lunch yesterday, and Schnellica. Our global sponsors, Jeffco and Changju Logistics. Our silver sponsors, Lamex, Rubicon VLS, and Transportes Malva. Thank you for your support. And if you didn't get a chance to go to their stands, you'll find their, on the app or on our websites. Please go to their websites, websites and find out what they do, because they sponsor the conference because they've got services for this industry in this region. So take advantage of their knowledge and people and so on. I'd like to thank our team, which I don't often do, but it kind of sparked off a little bit by a comment that a delegate actually put on the website or on LinkedIn yesterday about Louis certainly knows how to start a conference because of the fantastic mariachi band. They were a great addition to the conference. I hope you appreciated it. But, these ideas come from the Ultima Media team, the Automotive Logistics Events team, the big team that works with us. So they do a fantastic job for us. And I'm lucky. I'm just a good-looking, smart guy who stands at the front. So, but it's a big... Who's laughing at me when I said that? So they do a great effort behind. But most of all, I'd like to thank everybody who attends Automotive Logistics Mexico. It is a great conference, even for us. We arrange conferences all around the world. But as Chris mentioned earlier, the positivity, the interaction, we do get questions and conversations. You can hear the buzz during the coffee breaks and the lunches and the cocktail receptions. The way that the think tanks where everyone engaged so quickly, that enthusiasm, the curiosity, the positivity, the hard work that we can see happening around us. I think that there might be a lot happening in the Mexican automotive industry, but it's you guys, it's the people, it's this energy that you bring to the room, to the conference, and therefore to the whole industry. That will make the automotive logistics industry in Mexico so successful. And therefore, without logistics and supply chain, that's what will make the automotive industry in Mexico so successful. So we really appreciate the fact that you welcome us so warmly and play such a great part in our conference. Hopefully, we'll see you somewhere around the world, our conferences. I think, there's so many of them now, but trying to remember the next one that's coming up is actually in Los Angeles. That's a finished vehicle logistics conference. After that is April is China. After that is May is our automotive logistics supply chain conference where we're partnering with a new group within our company called Automotive IT. June is Automotive Logistics Europe. July is the World Cup, so I'm sure you'll all be cheering England as we win the World Cup in July. Okay. In August is our finished vehicle logistics import-export conference in Baltimore. Then September is Automotive Logistics Global, the original Automotive Logistics Conference in Detroit that many of you have been to, and it gives a more, a globally outlook on what's happening in the world. October is Automotive Logistics UK. The good thing about the UK, we would never get ourselves in a confused situation where we don't know what's happening with global and international trade. We're far too smart for that. Or that's what we thought until Brexit. And then November will be our Automotive Logistics Brazil conference. And then we're launching a new Automotive Logistics Eastern Europe conference at the end of the year. We're launching in the middle of the year this year in Europe an Automotive Logistics Awards, where we've been so fortunate in getting the judges list that we've got is so impressive. Some of the top, car maker, logistics, parts suppliers, the most senior logistics executives are part of those awards. So there's a lot happening in automotive logistics. The new editor, Joanne, who's joined us, but fortunately Chris is obviously going to be staying with us and keeping an eye on the whole group, but I hope we'll also keep a special, I hope we're still going to be his favourites in some kind of way. So hopefully if we don't, hopefully we'll see you somewhere around the world in 2018. But otherwise, we hope that you enjoyed the conference, found value from it. Please let us know what you think. And we'll see you all back here in Mexico in 2019. So thank you, everybody. And as I said, I'm learning a little bit of Spanish to help me get, as we're coming to Mexico so often. So I'd like to say thank you to everyone, or merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you.
Louis, one more.
Sorry, one more point.
Indeed, I think Peter wanted to add one more.
For the last question, I would like to add one more point to make the picture whole. Be successful, you need your partners. We were not alone. We had a logistics provider in-house and also in the inbound and outbound logistics. And this is very important that you keep them as a partner. We have achieved it with all ones, also in a very, very difficult situation. Thank you for that, and for the future is also a key for the success that the OEMs and the service providers, they have a very good collaboration as we could achieve it at Audi Mexico with our service providers. That's I wanted to add.
We couldn't have had a better last word for the conference.
Yeah.
So thank you, and thanks to everyone again.
Thank you.